Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know what time it is where you're at, but I'm Christopher Schwarzen, and I am here with my lovely, beautiful wife, Heather.
Hello.
Hello. All right, so if you tuned in last week, you heard us talking about what it takes to be a good homeschool father. Just starting off, the fears that I had when my wife first came to me, gosh, what did we say? 16 years ago, and you said, I want to homeschool.
Right.
And I said, whoa, what happened to sending the kids to school, and what makes you think we can do it? Right?
And here we are 16 years later, and we are still doing it. So we were talking about how it is that we've come this far, that there was a reluctance on Christopher's behalf.
Absolutely.
That we were able to overcome, and that God provided immense blessings through.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. The blessings that I have seen, not just in my children, not just in my wife, but guess what? In my own self, right? The changes that have occurred in me because of my involvement in homeschooling my children has been incredible.
And I do think that's something that we'll cover at a later time. Just the blessings that you can expect to see one way or another in your family.
And so today we want to kind of advance the conversation that we started last week, which was sort of the fears and reasons that you might be reluctant to get involved. And we talked a lot about those. So today, let's say you've reached a point, you're like, all right, Christopher, all right, Heather, deep breath, I'll give it a try. What next? Well, it's a good question. What next?
It is a good question. And when we got to that point, honestly, I had to make some decisions because, as we talked about last week, I already had in mind what I thought this homeschool adventure would look like.
Right.
And it wasn't a place that Christopher was quite willing to go at first. And you had some reservations because...
Well, because what you wanted to do, it actually is where we ended up a few years later. But I just wasn't there because I couldn't see the future of it. And you know, we were starting with our Mary Hannah, our first daughter, and just the fact that she was kindergarten. I thought, well, okay, there's not much we can do to screw up kindergarten.
Right.
No disrespect to any kindergarten teachers out there, anything like that. Remember, we talked about the difference between homeschooling and public or private schooling. There's a lot of management involved in children that you don't know. And that's not the case when you're dealing with your own family, your own children, right?
Right.
You should know that.
So we had to come to a place between you and I.
We did.
Where we decided mutually how we were going to go forward. Because you just can't start out anything, especially something as important as the education of your children, with one person powering their way through and demanding to be the authority, demanding to be the person that makes all the calls.
No, and I said last week, and I'll say it again. One of the blessings of that initial moment was your ability, and I believe that's the Lord, that's God, that's the Holy Spirit calling you back and saying, give him a chance.
Yes.
Let him be involved. Let him take some of the leadership of this.
Right, because really at that point, once I had the yes, I could have done what I think a lot of people do, which is just run with it. Oh, he said yes. Here's the debit card, and I'm going to go and do what I want to do.
Right.
But that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to homeschool my kids. I wanted us to be a homeschooling family.
Right. And so at that point, me saying yes really was me saying, okay, go ahead and try, but I think I'll stay somewhat detached from the process.
Right.
And that wasn't okay with you. That wasn't good enough.
No.
You wanted me to be involved. And so we talked a little bit about getting those curriculum catalogs and they're sitting on the table and just going, hey, would you at least take a moment to look at them?
Right.
And trust me, guys, you can easily find 5 minutes or so or a little bit more time in your day to take a look at those things. If your wife has placed them on your bedside table, she's placed them on the kitchen table, she's placed them in the bathroom. I don't care where they are.
Right.
You can find the time to take a look at it. Right?
Wives are always, I think, struggling to find buy-in from their husbands on things that are important to them. And I think sometimes it can be hard for guys to see why some of this stuff matters. But it does.
Yeah, and it's real easy as a father and a husband at this point to just hand off the reins to your wife. You've given her the permission, so let her go, right? And this may be what she wants, right? I don't think it is. I don't think the majority of women, this is what they want.
I've known a couple of people who that really was what they wanted.
It's true.
However, I will tell you that those are also people who burn out.
And it's not what God wants.
It is
Okay?
not what God wants because he provided a partner for you in this really overwhelming journey. How much more of a blessing is it to come to the end of a really hard day with a child that you've maybe been struggling, maybe it is an academic struggle, maybe it's a character struggle, maybe it's something else that you've been working on with that kid and you're just beating your head against the wall. Mm-hmm. Your husband comes home and says, well, you wanted to homeschool.
Right. And I probably have said that once or twice, maybe in our early time. Well, good. I'm glad I did not. Well, here's the thing. God distinctly calls upon fathers to lead the education of our children. We're the ones. We are the go-to guys. Whether you want to be or not, I don't know what to say. When God made you a man and you entered the covenant of marriage, you became the head of your household. And that didn't just mean bringing home a paycheck. Yes, listen, guys, I get it. A lot of what we feel our responsibility to the family is just working hard, bringing home the paycheck, and making sure there's food on the table and maybe a summer vacation, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's what we measure our worth by. And God wants so much more for us in terms of our family development, family involvement, family discipleship. We are called to lead the maturing of our family. That includes our wife, our children. That includes us, right? We are called to lead the family in all things. And so this includes the educational aspect of your family. You're called to be more than part of the process. You're called to lead it. Does this mean you push your wife out and take it all over? Well, no, that's suicide. and crazy. No, because she complements everything you do, and you should want her to be as active as you are, right?
Here's the thing. God put you two together to provide a balance.
Yes.
A balance of interests.
Yes.
A balance of talents, of energies.
Yes,
and
yes.
I have seen in families where both the husband and the wife are equally active, involved, and just participating to the best of their abilities in homeschooling, something really amazing happens. The kids respond, first of all, so much better.
Yes.
I will say that it has been a very rare thing for me to hear of families that have real difficulties, very deep issues with homeschooling or with their kids' education. I'm not talking character, I'm not talking anything else, but just with the education component, getting the kid to buy in to wanting to learn,
right,
if both parents are fully involved. And that doesn't mean dad walking in the door at the end of the day and barking at the kid because he didn't turn in his math papers. That means dad sitting down and being part of the process.
It does, absolutely. Well, so that first year that we did, I did look at the catalogs, and we said you had a different plan, but we went with mine.
We did.
And what I did, it doesn't matter what curriculum it was, but the curriculum that I went with, because it seemed the safest to me, like we couldn't make a mistake, came this large box. This box must have been 3 feet long, probably 2 feet tall, and at least a foot to 2 feet wide. I mean, it was giant, remember?
Yeah.
And inside the box was everything. And when I mean everything, it was the curriculum books, the teacher's guide, the student guide. It included every scrap of paper that you would need for every activity. It had 2 pencils, it had, a ruler, it had everything.
It did. And, we opened that box, and
you're probably a bit of a chagrin, right?
Well, my first reaction was, I don't want to be a teacher. This box was set up for me to teach school at home. And I think that's what a lot of dads have in mind. My wife is going to teach school at home. And you don't need a partnership to teach school at home because one person is directly responsible for funneling the information directly into those little brains. But that was what I saw, and I thought, whoa.
And I looked at that box and I thought, Eureka! This was the best choice possible.
You did.
Because, as far as I was concerned, well, we were never going to have to go to the store and buy, paper for drawing, or we're going to have to buy those crayons, or,
Right.
it had the pencil sharp, everything. And
Everything was in there.
We can't screw this up. There's no way to screw this up.
Right.
Which I was scared of.
But the problem with that, we quickly found for our family, was that this great curriculum, which no doubt was very, very well researched and expertly designed by a whole, just board of professional educators, just did not fit our daughter.
Well, and that's what, one of the things we'll talk about later, but the beauty of homeschooling is that it's one size doesn't fit all, and you don't have to buy the one size.
But at that time, you wanted the one size.
I
You
did.
wanted the grade level. You wanted as close to what we could get down at the local elementary school as we could get.
Well, and it's just because I didn't know better.
That was the safety zone.
This was just the fact that we had decided to homeschool. That was enough. That was about as much as I could take that first year. And so, wives, if you're listening and you're already, mentally 2-3 years down to where you're buying you think you want to buy this curriculum for science and this curriculum for English, and your husband is like, let's just buy the box set. You might have to give it a chance that first year.
We did, and it did not fit very well.
But it gave me...
But that it gave you the chance to
see that it didn't fit well.
Because it was exactly aligned to all the standards. And it was one thing, I think, for your child to come home and only filter back to you the things that interested them throughout the day.
Right.
But when it's taking place in your house, and you know that today... we were talking about the life cycle of a frog.
Right.
And you know that last year you spent half of the day down at the lake explaining the life cycle of the frog to the 5-year-old.
Catching tadpoles,
raising them. Then you're looking at it just, completely disembodied from its actual self on the sheet of paper.
It fell short.
It gave you the chance to say, that's not what we want.
It was right. It was a good checklist where, she colored the picture of the life cycle of the frog, tadpole, egg, tadpole. I don't know how. I can't even tell you what it is at the moment. But it allowed you to color the sheet, check the box, and move on. Okay, tomorrow we do blah. But you're right. Educating our children is much more than that. And so last week we said, listen, educating our children, especially as believers, because we're speaking to Christian believers here, it's about turning everything back to God.
Right.
And there's much more than just a coloring sheet. Helping our children understand who the Creator is, by His creation. Paul talks about this in Romans, right? This is so important. And the box set, it just didn't go deep enough into that aspect.
It didn't work for us, but again, this was the door that allowed you to see that what you wanted something different for your family. Now, for some families, I will say, it's actually been public school that has shown the dad that they didn't want that. I've known many people who the dad says, now they're going to kindergarten. And then a few months, a year in, dad says, you know what? Homeschooling can't be worse than the experience that we just had.
And I don't want you to come to homeschooling that way.
No.
I don't. I want you to come to homeschooling because you feel that stirring of the Spirit within your heart, or your wife does. It says, I think this is what God intends for us. This is what God wants our family to be and to do. You don't want it to be because of some negative experience in another schooling environment, right?
Right.
If that's what gets you there and that's why you're here and you're listening to this, then fine, welcome. Is homeschooling every day going to be, the bed of roses?
No. No, nobody promises that. Anybody that does is selling you something, and you should not buy it, because because it's going to fall short of your expectations.
But here's dads, husbands. Here's what your wife really needs, though. If you've said yes to her, it can't be a yes and walk away. Okay, you wouldn't do that with any. Well, I hope you wouldn't do that with any other aspect of your marriage. And I would say, as an aside, if you're mulling over what your marriage is like and you're finding yourself saying yes and walking away to different aspects, that's got to stop. That's not what we're called to be as husbands, right? Direct you to the letters of Peter and that, especially when it talks about roles of a husband and a wife together. But in terms of our education, she needs to know you really support this. She needs to know that you're in it. And even if you're still unsure, that you're willing to give this a good, thorough try, right?
It can't be the kind of try that is undermining. I think that's really important to say. Your kids need to see that you are both sold. They can't be party to the conversation that says, mommy wants to homeschool you, but I would like you to go to school because I want you to be able to take gym class.
Well, or even less. even if you're just like, mommy, this is mommy's thing.
Right.
Well, what does that say? So I don't have to do it because daddy doesn't say, daddy's not involved.
Right.
Daddy doesn't, that's not what you want. This is a family thing. This isn't a student-teacher thing. This is about family. This is about raising family. And, maybe a podcast for another time is just the importance of building legacy within your family. And it starts with educating your children. Absolutely. What do you want them to be? Well, you want them to be what God created them to be, right? Ephesians 2:10. You want them to be able to achieve the purpose, the works that God created for them before they were born. Before you were born, right? This is what you want for them. This is what you should want for them. And it starts, it starts here.
What about the women that I know who they homeschool?
Okay.
Their husband has said yes.
Mm-hmm.
He may veto a purchase, but only for financial reasons.
Right.
He doesn't really care or want to be involved beyond the finances and making sure it gets done. What, for you,
right?
What would you be missing out on? What have you seen? What have you been part of that if that was the extent of your involvement, what would you have missed out on?
If that's all I did, and I think in the beginning that is probably all I did. We picked the one curriculum and then I let you do your thing, and I was pleased to see the coloring sheet. But I think, especially after, at that point we had 3 children, and only one of them was of school age. But by the time the second one became school age, gosh, they were just 2 totally different people, and it, as we said, quickly became clear that the box, you had to think outside the box, right? To borrow that dumb phrase, right?
Yeah.
And so I began to ponder a little bit more. Well, what is it going to take to educate this one, and how do we do it different? But at that point, I think we were already a couple years into it, and I think personally, maybe because we were already homeschooling, we found ourselves finding newer resources. You know how it is, once you start something, you realize, it takes you down another avenue. Well, I didn't know that existed. And so all of a sudden, I think the doors opened a little bit to a wider world of homeschooling resources. I don't know if that's just because we were looking into it, or it was just the time as well.
I think it's all of it.
Both.
Yeah. I'm thinking that you would have missed out primarily on relationship.
Well, I think, yes, part of the issue is, think about it now. Let's say you send your children to school. They go away all day, 8 hours or so, they're at school. And I get it. Dads, we have to go to work. So our relationship with our children really is in the morning, and it's in the evening, and it's, dinner time, and it's bedtime, and it's whatever. And you come home and you go, well, what did you do at school today, right? And they say this and that, but you really weren't a part of any of that while they were in school.
Right.
This gives you an opportunity to really pour into them, to have another bonding aspect with them. Not just sports in the evening, the sports team, and that's great. We've done that. I love it. Out playing sports with my kids all the time, but we're not just all about that. We're trying to. I don't think I realized it at the time, but by being involved in the homeschooling aspect of my family, they got to see me in a different role that they never would have seen.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, they see you completely differently than they would if you weren't involved. You would just be what I think every man kind of on his worst days probably, hears Satan whispering in his ears, which is, you're just a paycheck.
Oh, it's easy to think that you are not much more than your work. And that is, come on, even if you do think that, you have thought that, you've said while you've mulled that over, that isn't what you want for your children.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, I've sat in that car plenty of times and gone, that's not what I want for my children. I want something different for them. Maybe I feel like I have to do the 60, 80-hour work week or something. I don't think you do, guys. I don't. But you definitely sit there and go, but I don't want that for my children. I don't want my children to be like that. And homeschooling definitely, if you want to help your children, again, going back to that Ephesians 2:10, you want to help them become the children, the people that God created them, you really have to get to know them. And through the homeschooling, just watching how different children in our own home solve a similar puzzle has been incredible to watch.
Oh yeah, watching them each get to the same point in math where they're doing mental calculations has been just phenomenally interesting to me. Thus far, we've had 5 of them get to the point where you can just, rattle off, 10, take away 5, plus 2, plus 1, take away 3. What's the answer? And then they'll look at you and say 5.
Right.
But it's interesting to watch the wheels turn. They're all unique people.
They are.
And some of them will sit there and use their fingers, and others you'll see their lips move.
Some, we won't say who, their tongue is constantly sticking out while they're trying to mull that math problem over, right?
But they're all so different, and you wouldn't know that about them if you weren't engaged in some way. Now,
no, it's tough.
I want to make sure...
You'd see, you get a report card and stuff, and you'll see the grades, and you go, okay, well, my kid does better in math than he does in English, and that's fair enough. But you wouldn't know why.
Right.
And so I think it's the why, determining why are they like this? Why? And again, it's not why are they like this, it's why did God create them like this?
Yeah.
What is it that this personality and this learning style says about who they become as people in service of the Lord?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I would definitely agree with that because, going back to the math example, we have 2 teenage boys, both of whom are quite mathematically inclined, do very well with math.
Yes. Yes.
One of them, I would say they both do equally well. One of them, however, I would never steer towards a career that involved math because I have watched him, and while he understands it and while he does it, it is not his passion.
There's no heart there for it.
There's no heart.
Oh, he's great at it.
He's great at it, but it doesn't light him up. There's the other one that sits there and, he'll just mull over for fun, the Enigma code, because that to him is just entrancing. And they both got the exact same grade on the same math course.
Right.
If that was all that we were seeing, was the grade at the end of the math course.
Oh, you should both consider engineering.
Right. You need to be
or
an
something
engineer.
Something of that nature. And I would look at them both and go, neither of you should be engineers at all because I know more about your personality. God has shown me through the homeschooling, through being an active part of homeschooling as a family, has shown me more about who they are and what he's leading them to do and to be. And as a result, we've been able to steer them toward activities that really build upon those passions that God has given them.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back a step then. All right. We've got buy-in from the dads now, right?
We got buy-in.
And it's a dad who's saying, okay, I'll help you pick school stuff.
Okay.
Right? Not just you go do it. But this is better than just saying go do it.
Right.
This is a dad who says, all right, you're right, Christopher and Heather. I need to give a little bit more effort.
Right.
What's your advice, Heather? And maybe look back on
I think a couple of things. Number one, I think that moms need to be prepared to listen, because we think we know our kids, and we do. We know them exceptionally well. However,
we do know them differently, though, don't we?
We know them differently.
Yes.
And there have definitely been times when the thing I thought I knew the most about a child was actually not what I knew the most. And so I think, number one, listen and allow your husband to have a voice. And if there is something that you are passionate about, explain it, research it together, but don't just pull the, well, I'm the one that's going to have to teach it card, because I think that is the number one way to shut.
Oh, it is. I'm so glad I never heard you say that.
Yeah.
Gosh, kudos to you and the Lord, because I think there are times where it would have been easy to say that, because when we started homeschooling, I was working insane hours, and I was not home much at all.
Right.
My career required me to be gone a lot.
Right.
And you were holding the bag in terms of the school.
I was. That was the next thing I was going to say, actually, is for moms to be prepared to be creative with your school hours, so that if dad wants to be involved, he can.
Right.
Don't be so stuck to a timetable that, but we finish school at 2:00 every single day. Well, dad doesn't get home until 6. Well, that means that dad never gets to be a part of anything.
Of the school. And I'll tell you, man, that's
hard.
Tough. That's tough, because you have to have some pattern of stability in your in your schooling. It's tough to just be free flowing all day and all week. You can't do that.
And you can't do that, but
it's got to be the willow that bends.
You do have to bend. You do have to bend. How many years did you get up in the morning to teach Mary Hannah French?
What time did we get up?
No, how many years did you do
How many
that?
years? Oh, 2, 3, maybe?
3.
3 years I got up. So there was a time many years back where I spoke fluent French. It's funny how it's slipping as I've gotten older, because I just don't use it as much. But it was time to start a foreign language with Mary Hannah. And, the funny thing is that didn't even cross my mind that, oh, I have this skill. Why am I not teaching her French? And we're jumping ahead a little bit, but that's okay. I think you were pleasantly said, well, why wouldn't you teach her French? Because I'm like, well, let's get a Spanish program, right? Kind of thing.
Right. She wasn't interested in German. I speak German, and she wanted to take French, and he speaks French. So
why wouldn't I?
And that is, again, that harkens back to God gave you skills.
God gave you skills.
God gave you skills. Mm-hmm. And the things that were poured into you when you were a kid, this is where they get to shine.
It's true. So, for the French, and we'll talk more about actually getting involved in teaching your students courses and stuff like that in another later podcast. But, we got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. We did French for half an hour while I drank my French pressed coffee, mm-hmm. and then I went to work.
Yeah.
Was it tough? It's like any exercise routine. The first day you do it, you're all super excited. The next day you come to exercise, you hurt and you cry and you don't want to ever go back. And then the third, fourth time you go, you start to get a rhythm, your body starts to adjust, and it's all okay. And as long as you maintain, mm-hmm. Like an exercise routine, getting up at 6:30 to do French in the morning is fine. And you know what? My daughter, she was up before I was half the time, waiting for me to come in and wake her up so we could go do French together. Because that, to her, it wasn't just French education.
Yes.
It was daddy-daughter time.
It was. And that is something, again, that goes back to relationship. Dads, this is the opportunity that God gave you to have just a voice in your kid's life that you will get no other way.
No, dress shirt and tie, sitting at the table. I mean, fully dressed, ready to run out the door because I took the bus to work, had to catch that bus, and just fully clothed to go to my job.
To this day, she loves French. She's actually a French teacher.
She's a French
now.
teacher now to high school students.
And I really believe that part of that is because it wasn't just French lessons. It wasn't a textbook. It was Dad.
Yes,
You
yes,
guys used
totally agree.
textbooks, but
Well,
you
sure.
were the conduit for the language.
Yes.
So the next thing I would say, specifically to the husbands, is go to a homeschooling conference with your wife.
Yeah, you know what? Yes, and if you can't do that, you don't have one. Get as many catalogs as you can. Get on the catalog list and start doing it. You know what? I can think about 10 billion things that might actually be better than pouring through homeschool curriculum catalogs. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But you know what? We'll make a date of it, right? Let's hit Starbucks.
Right.
Let's get whatever it is you drink at Starbucks. You know, I just get the Americano. I don't know.
Right.
You do the fancier things. I know. That's for my wife. Guys, are you like this? Do you order your Starbucks for your wife and she wants some frothy Frappuccino thing? You're like, that's for my wife. I'll just have the Americano.
But we do. We go and take some time to sit and talk about specifically what it is that we're looking to do to accomplish over the next year, but also a long-term plan.
Yes, absolutely.
We talk long-term as well, and that's something that we can talk about a little bit later. But, you know, I will disagree slightly with you on that. I think the catalogs are great, but I think it's important for dads to go to a homeschooling conference because I think that they see that they're not alone. They see that there are plenty of other people who are out there homeschooling. You get to put your hands actually on curriculum materials and see what's out there.
Well, I think, before I went to a homeschooling conference with you, I went to the homeschool, curriculum fair. So
We went to a vendor hall.
a vendor hall.
Yes.
And so I wasn't quite ready. We were already doing the homeschooling, but then the conference thing's like, I don't know that I want to do that. And so going to the vendor hall where everything's on display to be sold was actually like being in a candy shop, toy store kind of thing, because you're right, it was all hands-on. You could peek through everything, and there's some really cool stuff. And that's why I said the catalogs is that the catalogs have gotten so flashy at this point.
They
They're
are,
not,
yeah.
When all we used to get at the beginning was the Rainbow Resource Catalog, which, don't get me wrong, I mean, the thing is the size of a telephone book. It's made out of telephone book
They
paper.
issue it in 2 parts now.
That's right.
They issue it 1 year, you get part 1. The next year, you get part 2. Then you get part 1 to replace again. Yeah,
I mean, it's got everything. It is the telephone book of
it is.
homeschooling curriculum, right?
Right.
But there are some others that are just super glossy paper, really cool pictures.
There's some now that they don't even tell you what it costs. They just show you all of these amazing, beautiful, wonderful, soft focus moments that you're going to have with your child. And how your child is going to rise up every morning and call you blessed and thank you so much
that's all
for
right.
imparting wisdom.
Ours do, don't they?
Not every day. No, they do not. I think that's why I think that the catalogs are great. They kind of dip your toe in.
But here's why I say this is a start, okay? Because it at least begins, if a dad doesn't have any other input, at least it gives him an opportunity to sit and look through and begin a conversation with his wife. Well, why would you choose this math
I can see that, yeah.
when I'm looking at this one and that looks so cool? I mean, come on, they're going to build rockets with this math program kind of thing.
Right.
Why would we not do that one? And then the wife can say, well, that's, $10 kabillion, and it's probably out of our price range, because it's a real rocket to Mars, right, kind of thing.
Right.
But we've had those moments where you said, I think we should just, and I go, wait, did you see this one here?
Yeah.
That'll suit so-and-so. We were just talking about this yesterday.
And we've, on the flip side, we've walked through a curriculum vendor hall.
Yes.
And I have been sold on something. And you looked at it and said, and then you started pointing out to me the things that you didn't like about it. And I was
Right.
able to go, oh, you're right. No, this is not a good fit.
But the vendor halls are really good because outside past the catalog, if you can do that, and I don't know, maybe you don't have one near you, and so catalogs may be all you get online,
Oh, yeah.
website stuff. But if you can get to something like that, just being able to walk through your wife and actually then see, come on, you want to see the merchandise before
Yeah.
you buy it, kind of thing, right?
Right.
It's like a new car. You don't buy a new car without driving it, do you guys? No, you don't. You drive it and then you come back the next day and you drive it again and then maybe you buy it, right?
Right.
That does definitely give you an opportunity. You're right. It also does put you in a place where there are a lot of other homeschooling families.
And it
to sit there and say,
normalizes.
it does. And you can feel like a fish out of water, and that's okay because you know that there's, probably 80% of the other guys in there may feel like that too. But
sure they do.
But you're there.
Yeah.
And I will say, the times that we've been able to go to homeschool conferences together, there have been some wonderful topics to sit through that really hit
Yeah.
on some of the issues that we're trying to deal with at the time.
Yeah. We have been able to go a couple of times, just Christopher and I, as a date kind of thing.
We're desperate when it comes to dating.
We have 9 children, so curriculum fair date is a good thing.
Oh, man, I'll take it.
But I think that it was good for you, again, especially early on. I remember the first time that you went just to the vendor hall, and it was really, I think, overwhelming. But it did normalize some of that for you. You very quickly went from, oh yeah, we've got a couple catalogs, to, oh my, wow, look, there's this whole building is full of people selling stuff just for homeschooling.
And that's how it is now.
Yeah.
When we first started, it was not like that at all. And so the key to not becoming overwhelmed and thinking it's too much or too little is the active conversation
Yeah.
with your wife through it all. You should be asking her, okay, so why? What makes this work for us? Why do you think that this is the math program that we should use, or the world history program that we should use, or whatever else it is? And it gives you an opportunity to go, like I said that day, hey, we were just the boys and I were just talking the other day about this aspect,
Right.
and how excited they are. Could we do more of that? And finding something else. It's the conversation that you're having with your wife through it all. And my wife was right when she says you have to do some short-term and some long-term planning. Okay?
And this is something that I think getting husbands involved can be something of a sticky subject in the hearts of the mom. We kind of want this in some regards to be our baby. It in some ways, we think of it like our newborn, where you just don't want to let it out of your sight and you don't want to let anybody else, come in and potentially mess it up. But that's very short-sighted and it's not biblical. These are not your kids. They are yours and your husband's together. And beyond that, they are God's. And he gave them to you to steward towards their purpose, with the intent of your husband stepping up and doing his part as well. And so for you to say, well, I'm not going to ask him what math he wants us to use because I know he's not going to like this one and I like this one because it's got all these fun manipulatives. That is not, it's just not right. It's just not biblical. Your husband is a huge part of the equation, and you are shooting yourself in the foot if you think that you can get by all the way through high school doing this like a Lone Ranger, because you can't.
No, you can't.
And you're denying your kids and your husband part of the plan that God has for your family.
Yes, dads, I don't think you realize, I think dads are sold a bill of goods that they, again, don't play a larger role in the development and maturity of their children. And that God has given us more than we imagine we have within us to pour into our children, whether they be sons or daughters. And I get it. There are stages with both that are awkward and awful.
Yeah.
Remember, you were awkward and awful to your parents, too. Gosh, may still be. I don't know.
Yeah.
And, the best way to get through that is to do it together.
Yeah.
To not isolate yourself from the family, to not isolate the child. We talk about bonding.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to chemistry, you'll talk about bonding as well. But I can't tell you how important that bonding is when it involves the whole family as best as it can. And that looks different in every family.
It does. But, we talk to our teenagers. Each one has gone through a phase of feeling like they are uniquely dysfunctional. They are uniquely messed up, uniquely misunderstood, whatever it is. And I get it. I went through it. Christopher, I'm sure you'll say you went through it.
Yes, I admit it.
And one of the first thing that we always say to them is that this is something that Satan has repeated to young people throughout the ages. You're different. You're not needed. You're not part of the thing that they have going on. You're not part of the equation. They don't want you there. He will separate you from the pack because he does prowl about like a roaring lion seeking someone to destroy. And the way that they do that is by separating someone out. Wives, don't let your husband be the one that is separated out from the pack that you have going on.
No, don't do it.
If you are homeschooling your children, you are going to turn into a little unit. I don't care if that unit is just you and one kid or you and 7. You will have your own subculture and conversation that will develop, and you want your husband to be in on it. You want that cohesiveness. You want that unity, and you need that unity. You do.
You do. I can, it's very easy as a dad to come home and feel left out. And maybe you've gotten to a point where, like, that's okay. It's not okay. It's just not. It's not okay. You can't allow yourself to feel left out, and you shouldn't, because that's not the way God has designed you. Again, if you're married, you have children, God has designed you to be a family unit. And it is so important, husbands, fathers, as the head of the household, that you take a leading role in every aspect of that, and that you play an active part. That isn't saying yes and walking away. That is being a participant in all things. I don't know what that looks like in your own family. I know it has changed in our family through the years.
Oh, yeah.
And that is good. I think there has been a lot of growth for all of us.
Different seasons will look differently, but the main thing is being a team, a unit together, working together, and being a homeschooling family, not a family that happens to homeschool.
Absolutely. Anything else we're missing today? I think that kind of wraps it up.
Absolutely.
We hit on a lot of different things. The takeaway here, dads, is give it a shot. Tell your wife you're going to give it a shot and get involved. Then ask for that catalog, ask about that convention, get involved. Make a date night out of it. You got to do it by candlelight with Chinese food and make it into something else. Do it. Put those kids to bed early, and it's catalog night. Are you ready? Make it fun. Yeah. Make it family. All right? I'm going to leave you with a Bible verse today, just like we did last week. Today's Bible verse is Proverbs. It's chapter 13, verse 22. All right, you ready? Here's today's Bible verse. Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. This isn't just about you. This isn't just about your children. It's a legacy through the generations. Okay? Maybe we can close in prayer today.
Absolutely.
All right. Lord Jesus, we thank you so much for the chance to be here again. And to whomever is listening to this podcast, we just pray your blessing upon them. Just continue to lead them. They are interested in homeschooling, obviously, to be listening. And I pray that they would just hear your voice, Lord, to help them go the way that you have called them as a family. But Lord, I just pray that there would be strong families being raised up, Lord Jesus, whose sole purpose is to follow you in true obedience. And I pray that for my own family as well. And I pray that not just for me, not just for my children, but my children's children and beyond. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. Are we back next week?
We are back next week, next Monday, and we'll continue this conversation,
Absolutely.
talking a little bit more about practical ways
To
that
get
dads
involved.
can be involved.
Yeah, because you know what? Now that you said yes and you've picked the curriculum, I get to be a part of it. All right, have a great week. Praying for y'all. Bye.